Hi, it's Dan with EUJUICERS.COM, and in this video I'm going to show you how to make macadamia nut butter using a juicer. Now, why am I using a juicer? Well, macadamia nuts are a little different than most nuts because they have a really high fat content, about 85%. It's the good fat, the monounsaturated, the kind of fats you'd find like in olive oil, can actually help your cholesterol. But because of that high fat content, it can be a little trickier to make nut butter, because normally you would make this kind of nut butter in a blender, but a blender runs really fast, 20,000 RPM. It can generate heat, it can generate oxidation, and with something this high of a fat content, you can actually produce it a lot more gently in something like a juicer that's only running anywhere from 45 to 120 RPM. If you are going to use it in a blender, if you're going to make this in a blender, I would recommend using the pulse function, just going pulse, pulse, pulse till you hit that consistency, because it can rapidly turn into liquid. It can separate. You'll see a brown layer of oil on top. The advantage of using a juicer is a horizontal juicer has what's called a blank screen. This is also called a homogenizing screen. This is included as standard in all sauna horizontal juicers. You can't get this in a vertical juicer. The technology just doesn't work with this. But this basically turns the juicer into a low-speed food processor. You see, there is no screen to push produce through to make juice. Instead, it just crushes whatever goes into it. And for something like macadamia nuts that has such a high fat content, it's ideal. You can also use this with cashews, sunflower seeds, peanuts, all sorts of things. But it's great for this. So what do you need to do this? Well, obviously you need a horizontal juicer that has a blank screen. You also need macadamia nuts, and they come in two forms typically in the store. They come in the natural form, sometimes called raw, but they're not raw. They have been heated in order to remove them from their shells. And they also come in a roasted form, usually with salt, sometimes with like cinnamon and sugar, things like that. You can use either. You can use natural or roasted, and you'll get different results. I tested it at home last week with both. I tried it with the natural and I tried it with the roasted. The roasted gives you more of a traditional nut butter flavor. It's got a stronger, more nutty taste. The natural gives you a lot lighter flavor, almost something like butter. And you would use this in a similar way. You can mix this like with cocoa powder and some sugar. If you want to make like a home Nutella, you could actually roast it in the oven yourself, add some salt, things like that. But in the natural form, it just mixes naturally really well with lots of other things, has a real light taste. And in fact, my wife likes to use the butter from macadamia nuts, from raw macadamia nuts, as a substitute for shea butter in her home cosmetics. So how am I going to do it? What do you need to know when using a horizontal juicer? Well, like I said, you need the blank screen, and all the sauna juicers have the blank screen. This model here, the 929, is solid stainless steel. It has a variable speed motor, and I'm going to run it at speed 3. That's 90 RPM. I think that's a good balance. The higher the RPM, the more heat will be generated, but I think it's a good balance between the gentle processing and getting enough speed to generate heat. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to run it through twice. The first time I put these macadamia nuts through, the consistency will be more like flaky or powdery a bit. Not all the oils will be released. But then what I'll do is crush what comes out into little tubes, put those through, and that's going to make a smoother result. You can even process it 3 or 4 times if you want a smoother result than that. But in my testing, I find 2 times is pretty ideal. So I'm going to turn this to speed 3. I have the little tap here to block it, just to keep anything from dripping out, because everything's going to come out the front. I've got a pressure cap on this juicer. I may remove it. When I was making it home, I actually took it off. This is just going to increase the squeezing power. I'll see how it goes. And then I'll just start slow. That's the main thing. And then as it starts going through, it'll warm up just a bit, and you'll find it processes a little better. So I'll start it with maybe a scoop just like this, and we'll see how it goes. So it's done, and you can see the consistency here. I only ran it through once. I thought I was going to do it twice, but as you can see, it came out real kind of creamy. It looks a little flaky, but what I'm going to do is put this in a jar. I'm taking it home because my wife wants it for her shea butter substitute for her cosmetics. Maybe we'll eat some too. And once it's packed into a jar, it'll kind of settle and have more of a nut butter consistency. I want to taste a little bit. Yeah, it's surprisingly smooth. That first pass really crushed things real well. I think it's because at home I didn't use this pressure cap. I kept the whole thing open, and this added more pressure. It squeezed a little harder, and it meant it only needed to be processed once. So that's it. Macadamia nut butter, super easy. Took like 5 minutes maybe. That was for 400 grams of macadamia nuts. First time through, worked really well. Again, you just need natural macadamia nuts or roasted if you want something saltier, more nut tasting. And you need a horizontal juicer. Any of the Sana juicers work. The Vidya SJ002, that's a highly underrated South Korean juicer, also works with this. It also has a blank screen, I mean. And that should do it. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions or comments, if you've made macadamia nut butter in a juicer or a blender, let me know how it turned out, especially if you made it in a blender. I'm curious how you did it, if you had to use the pulse function to make sure it didn't oxidize or overheat. So thanks for watching. I'm Dan with EUJUICERS.COM, and I'll see you next time.